Hello and welcome to MalMakes. Today we're going to be painting a scene from the video game Limbo. This is the full version. If you're interested in the time-lapse, you can click on the card here. Otherwise, let's get started. First things first, my husband and I, Steven, are doing a Let's Play on his channel over on Steven Plays of Limbo. So if you haven't seen it and you just kind of want to watch through it, you can go watch that. It's already started. I can put a link in the description or a card or something. And the second thing is I did do a sketch for this painting, but I'm not happy with how it turned out, so I decided I was going to freehand pretty much the entirety of it anyway. Now I'm basing this on the beginning of the game when you're kind of in the woods, and it reminded me of going hiking up at my grandparents' house up in the northern part of Wisconsin, but in the winter, kind of like in a foggy, misty scene. So I'm going to kind of base some of this on my memories of hiking, but also Limbo. Like there's no tree in particular or anything, but just kind of the feel of it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up some of my white and black, and I'm going to go ahead and do the background. Now, speaking of white and black, I'm going to be using titanium white for my white. I'll probably use some zinc white, which is transparent, just to kind of hide some of the definition and the changes in the background, because I want them to be very soft. And then for black, I have some Mars black and carbon black. And I keep both around. Golden does make one more color that's black, and I forget what it is. But Mars black is a bit brown, and carbon black is a bit more like ink. So I'm going to be using carbon black for this painting because I want it to look cold. As always, I'm working in the background first and then making my way to the foreground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of figure out where I want the bright part to be. And I think it might be nice if I have it kind of off-center a little bit, and I'm thinking more to the left. So I'm going to start by using some white, and this is just plain titanium white, and kind of filling this in so it's wet. Now I'm using all my tricks here to keep my paint wet. I'm using some retarder, I'm using some GAC 100, and I have a little bit of acrylic, what's this called? Flow release in my water. And if I dip my brush into the water when it has a couple of drops of that in it with the flow release, it really helps my colors blend well. And I notice it helps my paint kind of fill on the canvas better. Like I get these weird texture bumps from the canvas. It kind of gets rid of all of that, and it helps me out. So I'm just going ahead, and I know it's impossible to see, adding some of this white in. Then I'm going to take a little bit of gray and kind of start out here and work it in. Then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to kind of introduce some gray over here. Then I'm going to go back to some more white and kind of just make this a little bit smoother. Once I'm happy with the center transition, I'm just going to get a little bit of carbon black on my brush and work it in there so it mixes in with the white and gray I already have, and just kind of fill in out here, making it a little darker. After I've let this dry really well, it's time to start doing the trees. So I've drawn in two over here and kind of a third one, but I'm finding the chalk pastel pencil really isn't showing up. So I don't really have another option except just freehanding and guessing, so that's what I'm going to do. And I have a light gray on my palette, a medium gray, and then a darker gray. And I'm going to start with the light one and kind of do some trees towards the middle, and then move into the middle gray here, and then the dark gray over here. And they're just slightly darker than what I have on the canvas already, so you can see it. So I'm just freehanding these trees in, and you can see I'm kind of layering them. And I'm doing some of the branches. I'm not going to do all of them because this brush is way too thick. You can see this first tree I did is a lot darker, so I'm not letting it bother me because I will be doing darker trees on top, and it'll just blend in with those later. But I'm trying to make it at least nice because it's a little wavy up top here. Now that I kind of have these light trees in, if I keep moving this way with that same color paint, it's just going to be lighter on the trees when I want it to be dark. So I'm going to switch to a stiffer brush, and the darker trees here are going to become the lighter trees over here, at least that same color. I'll also do a couple more trees in here with the darker color. Next, I'm moving on to my third darkest color. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep filling in some trees. And I'm just doing these long strokes to kind of fill them in first. And some of them I'm doing a bit thicker than others. And I just push down harder on the brush. The trees are really coming along. I will need some darker ones over here and then a couple in the middle, but in the meantime I do want to do my mid-ground kind of back in here. So I kind of have this light gray, and I'm going to kind of just fill in a faraway hill. I think I've kind of made a mistake. I'm not super happy with how this ground plane looks. I like the colors of it and I like the transition it has, but I should have done it sooner and then the trees could have like sat on top of it, or at least some of them. So the first step in me fixing this is taking some soft acrylic in Zinc white, which is transparent, and just kind of going over some of these. It's going to tone down some of these trees so they're a bit more hidden because it's transparent white, so it's going to lighten them all up. And then I'm going to go over it down here too. Now that that's done, I'm going to go back to the same gray I have for these trees. And you can see I started this one. And I'm going to just bring these down too so they kind of come in front of this hill. Now I realized there's something else I wanted to change that I didn't like. Once I put these lines in, I was like, this hill should be darker. So I mixed up kind of a darker gray, did the side of the canvas while I was at it because I had forgotten to do that earlier. So I did this side of the canvas, brought in this darker gray here, and then I realized I had to paint these lines over. Oh well, the great thing about acrylic paint is you can just paint over things, and as long as it's pretty opaque, it doesn't matter. So once that dries, I'll paint that darker. I haven't touched this side of the canvas, which I should have done earlier, just like this side. Oops, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that now and then fix this side too. Now that everything's on the same page and fixed, I'm gonna add a little bit of shadows behind these trees down onto this ground plane. So I have a little bit of shading gray mixed in with a little bit of the gray I was using for this, and I'm just gonna kind of bring this back a little bit. There's a few areas where I want to do some touch-up work. Like I wasn't super happy with part of this tree. It was kind of transparent in some areas, like the paint hadn't quite covered it. And now that these are down here onto the ground, I kind of wish I had a few more in here. So I'm going to bring this darker tree down here. I'm going to bring this tree down, and then probably this one, and then give those shadows too. So I just remixed up this dark paint to fix this. So you can kind of see like this branch I'm going to fill back in a little bit more solid in here. And some of these lines are kind of wavy, like the tree's a bit wavy, so it's a bit strange. So I'm also just trying to touch that up a little bit. So I'm just going to bring this down right onto the grass or ground, whatever it is. Just kind of decide where I want the tree to end. And just stop it. The last layer is going to be pure black because of the silhouette. So I'm just going to go ahead and take my chalk pastel pencil and kind of fill it in. I really want to make sure that I have a really big tree over here, and maybe some other ones over here. And I kind of want to have a certain placement for them, so that's why I'm using the chalk pastel pencil instead of freehanding it. The other thing I want to do with this layer is I do want to put the spider in. He comes in early in the game. He's the first big thing, and he was mildly terrifying because I don't like spiders, so I kind of want to put him in here. So I'm thinking about hiding him up in these trees. So I'm going to be using this blue chalk pastel pencil because it's really hard to see up here anyway. And I think I'm going to maybe move some of these branches around and just kind of draw his body in here. It's really easy to see when I'm doing the black paint, kind of how I'm doing these branches. So I started by kind of doing the trunk here, and then I decided it was going to split. And then I just keep kind of filling in some branches, and I'm not thinking about it too much. That's always the problem I tend to have, is I think about too much what I'm doing, and then my branches don't look natural. So I'm trying to make sure I don't think too much, and I'm just randomly adding little twigs and little pieces that split off. So I have a nice random tree. And I will be putting smaller branches on this with a smaller brush, but for now this is good. I have a good base, and I'm just going to go on to doing another tree. Having done these two trees, I'm not super happy with this one and the placement of the spider. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase all the chalk with a wet towel, and I just keep a clean towel around so it doesn't get any paint or anything else on it. And then I'm going to go ahead and just kind of draw in the spider, because I want him to be kind of in a particular place, and then I'm going to kind of work the tree around him. I'm happy with how I've drawn the spider, so I'm going to go ahead and fill him in. And I'm just going to be using the carbon black like I was before. And I drew his legs in kind of stick-like, but they're going to kind of be wider, and then they're going to get smaller in the middle segment, and then all the way to a point at the very, very tip of his toes. So I'm going to fill in the body first, and then just work on those legs. I got rid of any extra chalk so I wasn't thrown off, but now it's time to add some refinement. So I'm just going to go ahead and add that stroke here, just kind of making it thicker towards the back, and then working its way thinner towards the toes. Continuing to refine this, I'm just going to add some small details like hair and kind of make these knees a bit knobbier. Like I mentioned earlier, now I'm going to go ahead and build the tree around the spider. So I've drawn in this branch that he's going to be standing on, and I'm just going to go ahead and fill that in and fill in some of these other branches. Just like I did the refinement for the spider, I need to do the same for these three trees. So I'm switching to a tiny brush, and I'm just going to add some finer little branches onto these. last thing I want to add is I want to add the little Limbo boy over here running, like he's going through a level. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw him in and kind of ignore his eyes for now. After he dries with the black paint, I'll put those in. So I'm just going to work on trying to add him in with the chalk pastel until I'm happy with how he looks, and then I'll just fill him in black. So I've been having trouble trying to draw him in, so I decided to kind of start with a stick figure. I find this helps me when I'm drawing, especially people. It's kind of like filling in the bones and then putting like the skin and the clothes on. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of refine this and add like his little pompadour and his like sleeves and shorts on, and that'll help me out. I'm finding it's really nice if I have a clean paintbrush with just water on it and my chalk pastel pencil, and I can switch back and forth really easy. And it's really helping to kind of refine the lines and erase, instead of erasing with like a whole towel and trying to get in little areas. Once I'm happy with it, I'm just going to take a very, very small paintbrush and some liquid black because it fills in a little bit nicer in small areas. And then I'm going to just fill this in. And I've taken so much care to get my chalk pastel lines perfect. I want to make sure I paint right to them. While that liquid black is drying, I went ahead and did my name. I did it in chalk first because I have messed up my own signature before, and then I went over it with white paint. I think it's going to be a nice repetition of value with the white here, the white in his eyes, and then the white for my signature. For his eyes, I just did 2 dots with the chalk pastel, and then I'm going to go ahead and just take a small brush and just paint in 2 circles in white. I'm going to give him some of his hair spikes, which you can really see in the app for the game, but I think it'll kind of bring it to another level, just kind of like the hair on the spider did. So I'm just going to use a small paintbrush and just add a few little spikes on his head. And we're done! We have the boy walking through the woods in Limbo. If you're interested in this piece, you could buy a print or a poster or bid on this original canvas. There's links down below. Also, consider supporting me on Patreon. You can find out more at supportmal.com. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of MalMakes, and I'll see you again here for another video game painting.